Now. Well, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me try this again. I had it switched. Hello, everyone. How's it going today? I want to welcome my friend, author, #1 seller on Amazon, cryptozoologist, and brother, D.A. Roberts.
Hey, man,
D.A.,
thanks for having me.
oh, thank you, man. If you wouldn't mind kind of explain to everybody who may catch us later or pops in who you are, just in case they don't know.
I'm a Missouri born and bred hillbilly. Spent most of my time as an adult in one uniform or another. I'm former Army, retired law enforcement. Been looking into cryptids since I was a kid back in the 70s. And it's something that I've always been pretty passionate about. I had to kind of keep it on the down low while I was still a cop because they kind of frown on that on the defense stand on the witness stand when you're giving testimony. They don't want a defense attorney bringing up the fact that you were a Bigfoot hunter. So I kind of kept that quiet until I was retired. But I've also been a writer. I've been a writer since I was a kid. But it wasn't until 2012 I had my first novel published, the first book, the Ragnarok Rising series. And now here, 12 years later, 10 years later, 11, well, almost 12, I've got 30 books in print with many more planned. And I hope to see where this takes me in another 10 years.
Yeah, it's great. And for all you who may catch us later, DA is an amazing author. I really love his books. I'm real big into his Lakeview Man and his Wild Hunt books, his Ragnarok books. They're all really good. Apex Predator, another real good one. You can find him. I've got his little banner down here. He's got his own podcast called DAX Machina. Really informational site. Really good. Hello, that one guy. If you guys get a chance, follow him on YouTube. Go to Amazon, look up D.A. Roberts. Follow him on there. Anytime he has a new book release, it'll let you know. Well worth getting his books. Very well worth.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
No problem, brother. So today I've I forgot to put that on silent. Today I want to talk about the Wendigo. And the reason why I picked this subject for today is for two reasons. In Saga Grimson Book 1, Grimson fights the Wendigo in the New World before the New World was even known as a New World. The other reason is Saga Grimson Book 3 is called Revenge of the Wendigo. And the Wendigo that he fought, the true Wendigo he fought and defeated in Book 1 comes back with a vengeance in book 3. So that's why I kind of picked that subject today. Um, hey, that one guy, I'm very glad to see you. Let me put this up here. Sorry, I was kind of talking. I love that comment, bub. You're very, very welcomed here, and thank you for joining us today. So that's kind of why I picked this. Now, I found it interesting. A couple years ago, man, you can find a lot of information on the Wendigo. Now, pretty much the only place you can find it, and it's hit and miss, is YouTube. And this fine gentleman right here, Mr. D.A. Roberts, I asked him to come on because he has a lot of knowledge on the Wendigo, which is helpful. So for me personally, my feeling of Wendigo, even though it's classified as a cryptid, it's just my theory. I don't really put the Wendigo in a cryptid. He's more of a evil spirit. He's a Native American evil spirit, and that's how I classify it.
I would agree with that. I don't think it's a cryptid. I think it's more of of almost like a demon.
Yeah, that's kind of where I am on that. But no, so that's what I find interesting. And for you guys who don't know, the Wendigo was first reported by the yes he is that one guy. DA is a solid, truthful guy. Give him a follow. Just just sub to your channel, The Bizarre and Unknown. Thank you, buddy. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. For you guys you don't know, the Algonquin was the first to report on the Wendigo. Now, the Wendigo is known as a very evil creature. I've heard 2 different stories. The one I originally heard was 2 hunters got caught in a thick blizzard, and one of them had died, and the other one was in the cave. And when you asked the spirits, whichever spirit comes to my aid and helps me to get me some food and to help me survive this, I will worship you. And the one spirit that put him in that predicament was a spirit that answered him, and it was a spirit of hunger and cold. So therefore, he cursed that hunter, and a hunter became the Wendigo. That is one of the stories I've heard about that. The other one is kind of similar to that, and that's by the Algonquins, and the Algonquins were the first ones to talk about them. Now, for this creature is he grows with what he eats. So the more he eats, the more he grows. He's known to be man, I just messed that word up. Anyway, skinny, almost showing bones, ashes gray skin. There is reports with horns. There's reports without horns. I think the original, I don't remember if there was horns in the original or not. Their lips are torn or chewed, and they just have an unforgiving hunger for human flesh. What is some of the stuff you've heard about on that, DA?
Well, to add to kind of what you said, I think that the different descriptions where they show up with like the skull of a deer and antlers, I think that might actually be a mask. I think as they grow, they're losing more and more flesh. I think it's something that they use as a mask. But then again, that's just my opinion. But and if they get big enough, they would actually transfer from a deer mask to maybe an elk skull, or I don't know, maybe it's cursed to grow with them. I'm not sure, but I do know it's a supernatural being, and they as you're saying, they appear to have no lips because they've mostly chewed them off, along with they've chewed a lot of the flesh off their own fingers. And the blood that's in the wounds looks blackish. They're very tall, very emaciated, and like you said, the more they eat, the more they continue to hunger, and they get bigger, but they can never get full. They're the spirit of starvation, the spirit of hunger, and generally they come on in the most lean of times in the winter, but not always. But there have been sightings along through the Appalachian Mountains, through the Rocky Mountains, across the Great Plains, through Canada. So they exist in a lot of the Plains Indians native mythology, as well as the northern tribes and some of the East Coast tribes. And I've even heard that there is a similar type creature that the Salish have talked about out on the West Coast.
Oh, I haven't heard about that one. That is interesting.
These mountainous areas are all places that would be would struggle in the wintertime because game would be scarce, food would be running out.
Yeah. Like I was talking to you earlier, this was probably the best description of Wendigo areas. This is an older map. It's based off the Native American locations, but you can see all through here where these Wendigo have been spotted and known to be. So we're both from Missouri, which in here it kind of shows it more of the East Coast side, St. Louis area, more along the Illinois part of it. That was probably one of the best ones I found on that. And some of the sketchings I found on the Wendigo are this one here. That's one of them. This one here. That's another one. That's probably one of the most common ones I see on them is this one here. I can't remember. I know I've seen this from somewhere before, but I don't remember off the top of my head. The other one would be this one here. That's just kind of some of the depictions of them. I have actually found, let me pull my notes up here because this name is going to be hard for me to describe because it's Hindu. But this, I was kind of trying to find to see if there's any other types of Wendigo around the world. The only one that I can semi come close to is this dude here. And it's called a Baramask. They are ascribed to be as hulking demon spirits that originated from evil deeds. They are a karmic consequence of an evil lived life. Karmic. Okay, karma. That's what it meant. Based in Hindu myth, they are the spirits of Brahmins or scholars of high birth who either did evil things in their lives or did not fulfill their duties. The resulting monster / ghost human hybrid possesses all of the knowledges of human life as well as a certain seductive power, but it is also wants to eat people. The concept of this Baramask is so prevalent in Hindu-based cultures that famous Indian filmmaker Bhushan Kumar created a supernatural film called Baramask based upon them. And that is really out of all my researches, and it's not, I mean, because Wendigo is cold. It's ice. Its heart's made of ice. It's a creature of cold. But honestly, I mean, it's kind of fascinating. You look around the world and you find other types of them too. And that was probably the closest one that I could find. I know from my research, Wendigos also got sunken in eye sockets with red glowing eyes, but they are known to mimic voices. They don't have the knowledge of the person, so it's thoughts like, say I call DA, let's think of a good one here, Roger Dorr. The Wendigo's not going to know that's what I call him, all he know, hey, DA, so that's one way to tell. If you got something calling you in the woods, it sounds very familiar, like someone if you ask a certain question that only that person will know, the Wendigo cannot answer that question, and that is a good sign to tell you if it's a Wendigo or if it's your person.
It said they'll also mimic the sounds of like babies crying or women weeping.
Yeah, that's another one too. I found one video. I'm kind of up in the air, or one picture. I'm up in the air on this one. To me, this looks really fake. I could be wrong. Just a lot on this one here just stands out.
I think that's probably fake. It doesn't. It looks like it was done with a art program.
That's kind of what I was thinking too. But I mean,
it's a good rendition, but I think it's not real.
Right, and that's
there's a lot of
I was on that. That's why
there's a lot of AI stuff out there.
Yeah, well, there is, and that's why I kind of put that up there, because even though to me it came up as an AI deal, and that's my first thought when I was looking at it, I was like, this looks computer generated. It is a very good depiction of what you'll most likely see out there. I mean, I've created some too. Like this one here is what I created for my book. I created some other ones, but this is the one I chose for my book cover. I mean, so you're going to find stuff like that out there. And this is AI. This is what I made on the AI system for my book cover for Saga Grimson Book 3, Revenge of the Wendigo. So that's something you got to look at when you're getting on here and doing your research. And like I said, most of the stuff you're going to find is most likely going to be on YouTube. As far as the regular internet, it's hard to find anything. There is a condition that they call Wendigo psychosis. And there has been, I think I found 4 documented cases. Well, high value cases, I guess you can put it. So that there's talked about Wendigo psychosis, Wendigo psychosis. One was, get back in my notes here, 1636. Oh wait, no, sorry, that was the first one of the first mentionings. Or no, that was it. No, 1879, up in Canada, there was a reported of a Wendigo psychosis that happened. Joseph Fiddler, 1909. I know I had some other ones on here.
Was the Canadian one the Swift Runner event?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I was just kind of glancing over my notes, I have my notes too, or I have a bunch of stuff in there just so I can look over it. Yeah, that Swift Runner, that's like one of the oldest reported Wendigo psychosis cases I've found. That
one actually went to trial.
Mm-hmm. And he was, I believe he was killed and his brother escaped, if I remember correct. No,
he was executed for it.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And the other one was where the brother escaped. That's right, the other case. But yeah, I mean, he killed his wife and kids and ate them. I mean, that was
probably the most famous one. Actually, happened recently. I want to say somewhere around 1999 or 2000. There was a guy on a bus on the Trans-Canadian Highway. He just, for no reason whatsoever, he attacked and killed the guy sitting next to him on the bus, and began carving strips of flesh off the guy and eating it. They stopped the bus. Everybody evacuated, but the guy stayed on the bus with the guy he'd killed. And when the police finally got him in custody, he had Ziploc bags of meat he'd flayed off this guy in his pockets. And he didn't go to prison. He went to a psychiatric hospital, and I believe he's already out.
Wow. Yeah, I remember that story too. Yeah, and there's another one here. In 1984, a man trapped inside a Wendigo abducted a young girl who in turn released his spirit. Her novel, The Roundhouse, which centers on the Ojibwe boy in North Dakota seeking justice after his mother is raped. He used the Wendigo legend to explore views of retribution and justice among his tribes versus those of the U.S. government. I mean, that's another one too that honestly is not that long ago either. I mean, that's the one here. There's so many of these things. I mean, according to this, apparently Pet Cemetery even had a Wendigo in it. I don't remember that. I've seen that movie once or twice. So I mean,
I don't remember seeing one in it, but I've heard that there's supposed to be one in it.
Yeah, I don't remember. I've seen that movie once or twice. And that was back when it first came out, and I just haven't watched it since.
There's a movie that was made just a few years ago called Dark Was the Night. It's about Wendigo, and it's pretty damn good. My wife and I both enjoyed it.
I'll have to look that one up. So
it's on Netflix.
Oh, I'll have to look. I got Netflix. I'll have to look that up. So there's a lot of interesting stuff out there. I mean, and this demon, that's what I call it. This demon is, man, he's just pure evil. Out of all cryptids or stuff like that out in the woods that I can run into, there's 3 things. 2 of them I consider supernatural. One I do consider a cryptid. I do not want to run into. As cool and fascinating as it would be, my fluffy butt ain't going to survive it. And that is Wendigo, a Jinn, and a Gugwi. Them 3 things there are probably the most dangerous things you can run into out in this world. I mean, they are bad juju.
Well, any of them are going to be very difficult to kill.
Mm-hmm.
And your odds of survival are pretty low.
Exactly. So I mean, as cool as it was to have, would have that under my belt, not really looking forward to doing that. I mean, that's not really my forte. I've also found in my research it's kind of interesting how many times like a dog man and a Wendigo get mixed up. You hear a lot of people taking reports of Wendigo, but when you hear the report, it looks like a dog man. It don't sound nothing like a Wendigo, and
A lot of
vice
people
versa.
confuse Wendigo and skinwalkers as well.
Yes, that's another one. What was the other one I seen too? It was crawlers. They
Mhm.
also they crawlers is another one that I
Well, I,
found.
I think crawlers and the creature they refer to as the rake, I think those may be types of Wendigo. I think because of the way they're described, very gaunt and emaciated and gray skinned, I think it just might be a Wendigo sighting and they didn't know what else to call it.
True. I mean, and the other thing that those two kind of remind me a lot of is a ghoul. You
Yeah.
know, there's been several stories, especially during World War I, out in the what they called no man's land, that ghouls were coming up and eating the bodies of the soldiers that was killed in no man's land because nobody could go out and retrieve the bodies because every time you popped your head up over a trench, you got popped. So there was dead bodies just like all over a dead man's land in World War. And for those of you who don't know who dead man's land, in World War I, Germans and the Allies were on each had a trench, and it was trench warfare. Sometimes Germans would take this over, and then the Americans would fight that back and come over take theirs. Well, the space in between those trenches was called no man's land. The likelihood of surviving in no man's land was extremely low, and I found reports of the ghouls being out in there, and
Mhm.
that's why I found that kind of interesting too. Which that one I kind of write about that one in the Vageria Guard House of Battle, which is
Mhm.
based off of World War II. But the main character was saved by Grimson during World War I, facing a ghoul. So that's why I kind of had that in there because it was interesting. It's a common deal. Although ghoul is mainly known in the Arabic countries, that's where the ghoul comes from.
Mhm.
Um, but there's been reports of them, and that's what I found cool. Is I mean, and that's probably another one that's closest to the Wendigo that I could find. It was that one too, but I didn't put that one in my notes. But I mean, these things are just they're fascinating creatures. Or I mean, just really fascinating, scary though. Man, these things are scary. Um, I know Doc was telling me about one that happened a couple years ago at Pikes Peak. That's what I was
Mhm.
trying to remember. Pikes Peak, and that's a more recent one. And
That
then
was a sighting, and there was a Girl Scout camp in northern Colorado that was closed
mm,
because of Wendigo sightings at that camp.
that is the one where they were the three girls came up missing on the edge of camp, weren't they?
Mhm.
The
Yeah,
counselors and nobody was close by, and they went to the bathroom and disappeared. If I remember
yeah, they
correctly.
closed the camp.
Mm.
I'm planning on if I can ever get out to Colorado and hang out with Doc, we're going to go up and check that camp out.
I might. I got some kin up in Colorado, so I've got. So I mean, I and one of them lives up in the mountains.
Nice.
So yeah, so I'm like, I might have to find me a trip up there myself. So I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
that's cool. And then and another one that I found, which man, I keep listening to the audio, was in Wisconsin in 2019. When I listened to that howl in the audio, to me it sounds more Bigfoot than it does Wendigo.
Well, there is a type of Bigfoot they refer to as the Wendigo.
Oh, the Wendigo, I think is
Yeah,
what
well,
it.
the multiple tribes have like 20 different ways of saying
Mm,
Wendigo. There's Wendigo, Wendiga, Wentico, Wentica. Every tribe's got a slightly different spelling. So there's a bunch
mm,
of different ways to say basically the same thing.
mm.
But there's a type of Bigfoot that is carnivorous that they refer to as the Wendigo. So sometimes those two legends overlap.
Mm. That sounds more like this little fella right here, the Gugwe.
Definitely.
that's that's what I'm thinking as you're talking. I was like, man, that sounds like a Gugwe, Then, man, that's a bad mamma jamma right there. That dude is, yeah, he's hard. Um, but no, I mean, so these things they're real cool. I mean, there's countless stories of people going through woods or walking a trail and they hear somebody calling their name, and I mean it's that's been the baby, the child that you was talking about.
Mm.
That's another one. There's reports where they actually sit in trees and they're because their fingers are so long they look like limbs that they snatch people up. I've seen that too.
Mhm.
I've seen reports of that too. These things they're expert hunters. I mean, they are really, really, really good hunters. So you have to be careful. You have to be mindful. And there's, if I recall right, there's even reports where they kind of like blend into the environment, almost turn invisible.
Well,
Um,
if you're very gangly and skeletal, and you've got fingers like that, you know, just about anything can almost disappear in the woods if it stays still enough, as long as it's
mhm.
not brightly colored.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it's so. I mean, that's something you got to take into effect too. Is on that. According to lore, uh, a what I call lesser Wendigo. That's one that the Wendigo created. The true Wendigo, because there's a true Wendigo, and I can't remember what they call the lesser one, so I just write it down as a lesser Wendigo, and that's the one that he created. They're two different things, and I've found out like the lesser ones, if you cut out their heart and burn them, you can destroy them. But the true Wendigo, they say you have to take a silver lined blade, cut out the heart, burn the body, put the heart in a was it oak box if I remember, and I forgot. I didn't have that down in my notes. I think it was like an oak box or something like that, and bury that on holy ground. That there is actually no reports of a true way to kill a true Wendigo. But the lesser ones apparently you can.
I think the true Wendigo is a force of nature. I think it's a nature
Mm,
spirit, and
yeah.
I think that's why it can't really truly be destroyed. But like you were saying, the lesser Wendigos, these are people that have either become cursed or become possessed. Because in
Mm,
the Wendigo lore, it says the spirit of the Wendigo can possess people, and I think
mm.
that's what happened in the Swiftwarner case because he was in a cabin with his family and they weren't even out of supplies.
Right. And that's from a lot of what this is past research I'm remembering now. Um, like you say, the body of the true Wendigo was destroyed. Its spirit will actually go into something else. And generally, if you're known to be hungry, weak, and not the right of
Greedy,
mind, huh?
greedy.
Greedy, you are more acceptable to being possessed than you are any other way. And one of the key things they hit on is starvation. Starvation seems to be one of the biggest things they hit on for the most easiest way to being possessed by the Wendigo. What's up? Okay, well, let me check it out in a minute. I'm on a live, honey. Thank you. Sorry, guys.
You got
Um,
something outside the house?
no, my daughter's wanting to show me something that she
Oh,
made.
okay.
Yeah, I told her I'd check it
I
out
was
here
going
in
to
a
tell you, grab a pistol and go. I'll cover things for a minute.
minute. Yeah. Um, so, I mean, this thing is just like, it's a fascinating creature. Trying to remember, let me get back in my deal here. Um,
One of the
this is
things that
a,
I've heard that people say have supposedly seen them is that they're incredibly fast, and
mhm,
I've also heard described a kind of a clicking noise, like bones banging together or two sticks hitting together.
yeah.
Not unlike the way the Predator sounds in the Predator films, that kind of that kind of vocal clicking sound. But I think
Mhm.
it's more the sound of the bones, the bare bones striking together as it moves.
Yeah, see, I've heard that too. A lot of reports, they call it like almost like a teeth chatter. Like
Yeah.
the cold, your teeth chatter when in the cold. Yeah, they do that. They say that it's a
Hmm.
lot like it. Um, this is one of the depictions I found on what is called a lesser Wendigo.
Hmm.
That is a very common image I found on what the lesser look like. Um, I forgot I had this one when I was talking about when they were crossing between Dogman and Wendigo. that is usually what they're describing. In some instances, is that thing right there.
I wonder if different people that have been possessed by Wendigo might use a different large predator skull.
That, yeah, I never thought about it. I've only heard about the horns. Uh,
If they use a deer mask or an elk mask in one stage, at a smaller stage, they might use the skull of a wolf.
that could be. I mean, that's, yeah. I mean, that is a very good possibility. I ain't actually. I think I've heard of that theory before. Now that I think about it.
Yeah, we've talked about it on our show about how we
Yeah,
thought that the skull and the antler was just a mask.
yeah. That's whew, yeah. That could be.
As if a gaunt, skeletal face without any lips wasn't scary enough. Throw a deer skull on it with antlers.
It's almost like a certain stage in their life. Like when they start out, they're most commonly more human size. Still have somewhat of human features left to them. And the more they eat, the bigger they get, the stronger they get, the more they change. I mean, could it be like a rank structure amongst them?
I wonder if there's any connection between the Wendigo lore and the Wild Hunt from Norse mythology, because that too is a massive horned creature, and once a year, when the Wild Hunt is running the countryside, anything in its path is prey.
That's quite possible. I mean, and the leader of the Wild Hunt is Odin,
Mm-hmm.
and it's usually winter solstice when they go out and hunt. So I mean, it's all
Right.
tied to winter. Because I know, like when I done my little recording on the truth behind Christmas, um, that was one of the things they talked about was Odin took the wild hunt during the winter solstice, and that was possibly where the Santa Claus and the reindeer came from. Was one of the theories was that because him and the riders would travel the countryside hunting things.
Yeah.
If I remember right, there was 4 riders altogether, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, people would either be people in the path would be one of two things. They'd become prey, or they'd get swept up in the hunt and wake up the next day miles from where they passed, or they were swept up by the hunt.
Yeah, I mean, and that's actually a really good theory. I never really put that together, but now that sounds. I mean, that's right up that alley. It's all the same time frame, same environment, same everything.
Well, if you look
Yeah,
at
that's
images
good.
of the wild hunt, you see that large creature in the back with the antlers. I mean, and know in Norse mythology, it's representative of Odin, but it's got the deer antlers and that haunting appearance.
Oh yeah, I mean, and you look at your English version of the Wild Hunt, which is a different. It's similar but different. I mean, even them they talk about the black shuck that run with the Wild Hunt. And I mean, I put that one in my Saga Grimson book 2, Black Death, when Grimson faces Loki, and Loki is portrayed as the Wild Hunt, the Black Shucker with him. That's why I used that one in that book. Um, I mean, they're horned, and there's 4 riders that ran across. They're black cloaked. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a possibility too. That's interesting. That's actually I never really put that together on that. I'm glad you said something on that. So
Just one of my crazy thoughts that pops into my head once in a while.
it's a good one, man. It really is because it makes a lot of sense. Because like I I know the Wendigo is American based, Native American, but when I think about it, it's like I said earlier, and you said too. It's a demon basically.
Mhm.
Why can't there be other types? And that's why I got to looking, and I found that Baramas.
Well,
Go ahead.
I was going to say that, we know for a fact now that the Norse made it to North America far earlier than
Mm-hmm.
Christopher Columbus. The Heavener runestone in Oklahoma dates to the 8th century. They carbon dated it. That's what, 600 years before Columbus. They believe the Viking settlement at Vinland was, 400 or 500 years before Columbus. If the Vikings had made it this far inland as Oklahoma, who knows where else they made it. There was also a linguistic study done among the Lakota, the Sioux, and it found that a number of the Lakota words had Norse origins.
And I could see that because they just recently, within like a year or two, found a sunken Viking ship on the Missouri or Mississippi River
Near
outside of
Memphis.
Tennessee. There,
Yeah,
yep,
near Memphis. I remember reading about that.
yeah, and
So
if the ex, oh, go
if
ahead.
the Vikings interacted with the Native Americans hundreds of years ago, at this point, what, 600-700 years ago,
Yeah,
the they could have told them stories of the wild hunt, and it could have been incorporated into Native American lore, or it could have become something else entirely. I mean, they could have shared their stories and said, hey, we've got these similarities. They could have built that on common ground, because the Norse were traders. They
hmm,
had a bad reputation as being, and of course some of that was earned. I mean, look at what
hmm,
they did at Lindisfarne and a lot of other places. Vikings did raid, but they were
hmm.
also notorious traders, and anywhere they went, they established trade routes. So it is not outside the possibility that the Vikings had been to North America and had established trade with some of these tribes and exchanges of ideas. So the wild hunt story could have affected the Wendigo lore. The Wendigo lore might have affected the wild hunt story. So anytime two cultures meet and share ideas, ideas do get exchanged.
Oh yeah, I mean, and we know through their stories that they ran into creatures like that. I mean, whenever they fought them up in Vinland, they fought the Skraeling. You look
Mhm.
at the description of Skraeling, that's a Bigfoot. They were tall, massive, hairy creatures that
And for
made
the
loud
Norse to
noises.
describe them as big,
Hmm.
yeah, that's pretty impressive, because the Norse were considered some of the biggest warriors of their day.
Well, and the fact that they got their butts whooped by them too tells you a lot. Because I mean,
Yeah,
Norse they didn't lose too many battles. They were when you fought them, 9 times out of 10, you wound up on in 6 foot in the hole or in the ground.
or
I
end
mean,
of the stick,
yeah, yeah, you
or the
know,
sharp end of the spear, or one of the two.
exactly. So I mean, we have documented stories through the sagas of them running into these types of stuff. So
Mhm.
yeah, that is a very good possibility. And they could have seen the Wendigo and go, "What the heck's the Wild Hunt doing here?" You know that.
Yeah.
I mean that. Who's to say they didn't run into one? We know they were up there. They've got runestones in Montana, Wisconsin. Uh, I think Iowa even had one, if I remember correctly. They're all up in that area. They were in Canada, and they got runestones in Canada from them. So I mean, you're all in that area where the Wendigo would be. You, I mean, very
Oh,
well.
absolutely.
So it's fascinating, man. And so I mean, I agree. I mean, yeah, that could have influenced it, or they could have went, "Oh man, that is what the heck." He's here cutting us down. I'd like to see if we can ever find any stories about that. That would be interesting if we could ever find some. Um, had something here. I mean, as much as the Wendigo has influenced them, like this here, since the 19th century, the Wendigo legend has also captured the imagination of non-indigenous authors. British writer Al Gore, blah, 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 Algernon Blackwood's novel *The Wendigo*, written in 1910, tells a similar story of a mysterious monster hunting campsites in the Canadian wilderness. Stephen King features a Oh, that was yeah. Stephen King featured did, and like I said earlier, in Pet Cemetery. So, well, I mean, we're looking here, early 1900s. This was influence. They're saying here that stories of most of your stories came about around 1800 to 1920 is when most of your Wendigo stories come from. Um, so, I mean, this thing is caught. I mean, it's caught your imagination and mine because it's in yours and my books as too. It's caught the imagination of writers and storytellers and filmmakers alike. I
Very
mean, what
much
was
so.
that? Huh?
I said very much so.
Oh yeah. I mean, what was that? What was that? It was a B-rated movie. Oh, was it Primal Evil? No, Prey maybe. Where Bigfoot squashing the heads of them Wendigo that came in and was attacking them
Oh,
kids and
Dawn of the Beast.
down to the beast. Yeah. I mean, look
Good
in
movie.
there. Good movie. Yeah, I've got them. I've got all them. They're B-rated, but they're still good, and they're really good. But I mean, they was in that film there. There was a butt ton of them guys coming after them kids at that cabin. Of course, here comes Bigfoot, the savior of the day, crushing skulls with his foot. Y'all get a chance to see that movie. It's a good one. It's a good one. I was trying to think there was something else. My brain's not working on the best. I had something else written here. Let me look through my notes again real quick. I'm just kind of jumping around on my notes. I'm trying to remember that family or that brother. I'll have to read through here. The Fiddlers. That's who they were. Okay, the Fiddlers on that window psychosis. That's where it is now. Found guilty. So that's Swift Runner. Okay, a tribal shaman, Jack Fiddler, and his brother Joseph Fiddler were charged with murder of Joseph's daughter-in-law, whom they had strangled to prevent her from becoming possessed by a Wendigo. After the brothers arrested, Jack Fiddler escaped the police and strangled himself, and Joseph Fiddler died from tuberculosis in prison. Huh?
Tuberculosis?
Yeah.
That's a bad way to go. I got Doc Holliday.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, and back then, I mean, sadly, that was a common death back then.
Yeah, not a way I would have wanted to go.
No,
it can be treated now, but even now the treatment's pretty horrible.
Oh yeah, I mean back then
I knew
none.
One of my sergeants caught it 7-8 years ago, and he said that the treatment was as bad as the disease. He finally beat it, but it took about 6 months.
Oh man, yeah, that is a bad way to go there. The first written mention of a Wendigo appears in 1636 report by Paul Lee, and I don't speak French, so you have to forgive me on this. Giuni, I can't say that very good.
How's it spelled?
Jeune. I want to say June, but that's not it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't speak French, unfortunately. Yeah, I was just going to guess if I could, but.
Yeah, Paul was a French Jesuit missionary living among the Algonquin people in what is now Quebec. He described a woman who warned of something that had eaten some tribal members nearby, and that would eat a great many more of them if he was not called elsewhere. And that's that's one of the first written ones down, and that's up there in Quebec, Canada. That was 1636.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first written documentation of them. So I mean, this is throughout history, and not just with the natives, but through white settlers as well. They're all talk about it, And I like your point you made the other day about not the off pass, but the Oregon Trail people.
The Donner Party?
Donner Party, thank you. Man, could that be something they ran into up in there?
That have something to do with what happened to them. I mean, that is a very, very famous case of cannibalism.
Yeah.
As is the case down in the Andes Mountains where the soccer team ate each other. But that's, there, of course, there are Native Americans down there, but do they share the same beliefs?
Exactly. And like that map it showed, let me pull that back up here. I mean, you're getting stuff all the way down into Tennessee, Kentucky area. So, I mean, what's to say that they can't travel outside of cold,
Yeah.
I know there's, like here in Missouri, besides what that map shows, I mean, I've heard cases up around the St. Joe area. The only one that I found here in the Ozarks, I don't remember. I don't think it put a date on it, but a guy was camping down around on the Missouri close to the Arkansas border, and ran into something that he described as a Wendigo.
That's
You
some
know,
pretty rugged terrain. I mean, look at how mountainous it is down by Eminence, Missouri.
hmm
There, for the Ozarks to be small mountains, there's some pretty deep valleys and high hills. At one point, the Ozark Mountains were as big or bigger than the Rockies. It's just geologically one of the oldest mountain ranges on the planet. They've been beaten down over time, but at one point they were massive. So and there's plenty of habitat for something like that. Look how big the Mark Twain National Forest is.
hmm
It's what, like 3.8 million acres of land?
yeah, yeah, and it's a lot of people forget about that, and the fact that the Ozark Mountains was the largest mountains in the North American hemisphere at one time. So look at that old magic. Look how much that old magic has been here. Because I mean the ancestors used to talk about the magic in the mountains. The Ozark Mountains were the largest, so that kind of magic was here. I
Yeah.
mean, who's to say it can't happen? I never put it off because we don't really get that cold of weather down here like we do up north.
We used
But
to. I mean, years ago,
yeah,
back in the 70s and 80s, winters were a lot rougher than they are now.
well, I mean,
And I
even
don't know if
even
you want to, how you want to describe that, but we get more ice than we get snow now.
yeah. I mean, even in the mid and late '90s, it wasn't until around '97 that we didn't start getting winters like we used to. That El Nino that happened back in '97 really changed our weather pattern here, and we started not getting near as much. But I mean, I remember having snow drifts down here when we lived in our travel hall, and we had to dig ourselves out of it. And I live here in Southwest Missouri too, so we used to get snows. So for that to happen down there, I mean, I guess it's plausible, and I never would put it off because I was like, man, I figured they had to be something really cold environment, but they may not. They may not have to. Oh, that's off the computer. I thought that was off my light getting into my eyes. Um, but so I mean, yeah, man, and this was a recent story that I was listening to earlier. I mean, very recent story. So we could have them down here and not know it. I
Wouldn't
know
surprise me.
I've heard somebody calling my voice in my woods before. I mean, this was probably 10 years ago. I chalked it up to my imagination. Now I'm going, I wonder if that was my imagination. It kind of scares when you hear one because the Arkansas border is not that far from us. What, 80 miles around roughly?
Well, and I don't know if it's Wendigo related or what. It was something weird. But some guys I talked to that were hunting up in Pulaski County, up in near Fort Leonard Wood,
Yeah.
had a deer camp set up, and one of them had gotten a 6-point buck. It was a good sized buck, and they had field dressed it, then took it back to camp, and it was cold that night, so they hung it up and were going to quarter it out come morning. And when they woke up, they said they didn't hear anything, but when they woke up, the deer was gone, and the rope that had been holding it up in the tree looked like it had been snapped about 15 feet up.
Oh, wow.
So they didn't
Yeah.
hear a thing. The deer was just gone.
And they didn't find no footprints or nothing.
Nope. Said the ground was frozen.
Oh, Lord. I mean, well, even if it was Bigfoot, I mean, you'd think they'd leave some kind of impression, even on a frozen ground.
They said they didn't know what it was, but if it had been a person, they would have cut the rope where it was tied or untied it and just lowered the deer down and took it away.
Right.
He said, but it looked like something had gone up there, grabbed the rope above the deer, snapped it off, and took it and just walked away with the whole deer.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because like you was talking about on your live Saturday night about that deer carcasses you guys found out in Joe Bold.
That was actually down at Blunk Road.
Oh, Blunt Road, sorry.
Outside of Galena.
Yeah. Animals would have chewed it up if the animals got it. And I mean, they would have left that there to do something like that, man. You'd really have to take your time if it was human. So, God, yeah, that makes sense. I mean,
well, the thing with the stuff we found down in Blunk Road, we can't without being completely certain, we can't say it was impossible that it was people. It was just really weird.
Yeah.
We can't say we know what it was. We don't. But that deer head laying in the middle of the road, I can't think of the reason a person would do that. And if a person had done that to try to scare somebody, you think we would have seen them because the road is the road dead ends at the river.
Yeah.
And we were on our way down when I saw it in the road, and it was about 50 yards from the river.
Yeah. But I mean, that's a prime example. I mean, like I was saying, if a man was doing it, you're going to find traces of them. And even if they
Mhm.
clean something, I mean, it takes time to do something like that. So
Right.
to find that thing snapped 15 foot up there and as heavy as Bigfoot are, even with the ground frozen, you'd find some kind of impression somewhere. I mean,
You'd think.
so, oh, yeah, that's, um, that one guy. What do you mean closed? Did you talk about Joe Bald or Blunk Road or Joe
Blunk
Bald?
Road's not closed. It's a public access, but there's no camping down there. Joe Bald is closed.
Yeah.
It used to be an active campground. It's all shut down now. You can still go in there. You can day use the place, but there's no camping allowed. It's just a weird place. I mean, it's one of those places you've kind of got to feel for yourself because it's very different. Um, it's it's kind of like a mini version of LBL. LBL was creepy as hell when I was in there, and I get a similar feeling in Joe Bald, but Joe Bald is a much smaller area. Uh, LBL is like 175,000 acres or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere in that ballpark. It might be 140, but it's somewhere between 100 and 200,000 acres. Joe Bald's only maybe 100, 150 acres, but it's very dense and overgrown. It used to be an active campground, but you can go in there and still see the picnic tables and the tables and the concrete tables that they had set up for people to use for campsites. But the woods have just taken it all over again.
Yeah. And it's funny you talk about that stuff because for a long time, I was stationed at Fort Riley, Kansas. My last active duty station was out of Fort Riley, Kansas, and I used to go down to tank trails to fish at the ponds out there because you got better fishing because nobody went back there. My dumb butt did it by myself in the middle of the night because my ex wife now she wouldn't go, and I've had several times I've been out there that I was like, something is here. I mean, I could just feel it. And let me put that up here. Hold on one second here. Wendigo summoned and not able to be brought back to the end of summoning.
Yeah, if they can summon a Wendigo, that's a dangerous thing. That's a fire you don't want to play with.
I've heard stories that dark witches can do that.
That's something I don't want to mess with.
No, man, but I've only seen like one, maybe two stories about that. Is it possible? Yeah, it's definitely possible. I don't
It's
know.
funny you should mention Fort Riley because it jogged my memory of a guy I talked to, and
Mm,
this would have been I may not remember all the details correctly because I talked to this guy probably 10 years ago. I'm trying to remember where I met him. I think it was at the VA. Might have, I don't. We were sitting. The story military guy came up. He found out he was ex-army. We started swapping war stories as old soldiers will do. And he's told me I said, "Well, you ever have anything weird happen?" And he was a tread head. He was an old tanker. And he said, "Yeah, when I was stationed at Fort Riley." I said, "What happened?" He goes, "We were driving some of those back tank trails, and there's a river down there." He
mm-hmm,
said, "We would go down and sit by the river and wait for the rest of everybody to catch up." He said, "Because we'd haul ass down through there." He says, "The
mm-hmm.
Abrams can really haul ass."
Oh yeah.
And he said, "So we're sitting down there with the hatch open, just cooling off." He says, "Then something across the river started hitting the side of the tank with rocks the size of basketballs." I said, "You don't think it was a person?" He goes, "Hell no, it wasn't a person. I couldn't lift the damn rock after it broke in half,
Uh-huh.
hitting the side of the armor." I said, "What'd you do?" He said, "We buttoned down, got the hell out of there."
Yeah. Like for me, when I used to, I mean, this happened to me like three or four times. I chalked it up originally that it was a cougar.
Mhm.
But the more I think about it, I never had eye shine because I would shine my light back there. I carried a Surefire. I always
Mhm.
carried a Surefire because in Iraq, if I worked the ECP point, entry control point on the base, and they come hauling ass down my ECP road, I hit them with that Surefire, and that thing's so bright that man, they'd hit the brakes because they can't
I've
see
got a
crap.
couple of Surefires, really good lights.
Oh, I love them. I've used them for two or three different deployments. Over in Iraq, I've used them. Love them damn Surefires. I
This
still
is my
got it too.
favorite. This is my favorite. This is my patrol light for
Oh,
years. This is a Streamlight ProTac HL5,
yeah.
3500 lumens.
Oh man. Yes. Okay. Yeah, I've got one. Give me a second. I'll let you talk. I'll grab mine real quick.
I've got a couple of Surefires too, um, and then I've got one of the pistol lights, a Surefire pistol light on my Glock 17, and that was my duty weapon for years. But I've got a Surefire over on my belt. Uh, it's almost within reach. I don't want to have to jump off camera to grab it, but Surefire makes a good light. I mean, they make one light that is so bright that special forces can use it to signal passing satellites. It's obscenely expensive. You know, I couldn't afford one, but when I was researching flashlights and looking up at some of the lights on Surefire's website, there is that one. It's like where mine was, 3,500 lumens. It's like 1.2 million lumens or something like that.
Yeah. See,
It's
I
also
can't.
like $1,400
I've
for
got
a
a
light.
stream light that's looks just like this is my Surefire here,
I have
and
that exact one right over on my belt.
I love this. This has been I've had this my second or third deployments when I got this. This thing I can shine it up here and light up a little over 100 yards down from me where the tree line is. Light that whole thing up with this bad boy right here. I gotta get batteries for it, but my stream light looks just like this one and
Mhm.
is probably just as bright or almost as bright as a Surefire. It's
I've got
like
a I've got that same model of Surefire over on my old duty belt, but I carried that as my duty light forever.
mhm.
But the problem was is if you used it for a building search or anything sustained, that it went through those lithium batteries went through them pretty fast. So I started looking for rechargeable replacement and just happened to stumble across that ProTac. And I was like, all right, well, I'll give it a try. And the ProTac was a little pricey, especially when you add because it comes with just the regular lithium ion batteries.
Mhm.
But I went ahead and got the upgrade package with it and got the rechargeables. Did not regret it. Did not regret it one bit.
I'll have to look into that. I love this thing here. I've got to figure out what happened to my batteries because they don't take a normal battery. You know, my Streamlight does. It takes AAA if I remember correctly. These little odd
Oh,
looking little things here. I
this
got to
one
find
would
them and
normally
replace them.
take four of the like just like that those little lithium batteries.
Yep.
Instead, it has two of these, which are rechargeable,
Mm-hmm.
and they hold their power a hell of a lot longer than those lithium lights. I would
No
get
kidding.
maybe 20 minutes of solid use out of my Surefire for when we were doing building clearing. Uh, but this thing, once it's fully charged, I could use it for hours. I mean, hours of sustained use. It gets hot. I mean, it gets
Oh yeah.
damn hot. I mean, the thing gets bright as the sun. It feels like, but you leave that thing on more than a few seconds, that the bezel of it starts getting really hot. And if you bump it and it comes on when it's on your duty belt, you will know it because you'll feel it through your armor.
Oh man. Yeah, I love those things. I'm gonna have to look into that one you're talking about. I love that style light, especially for out here, because you
Mm.
never know when you hear something thump in the night. You're like, okay, what am I dealing with? I
I
mean, out
bought mine
here,
at
I've
Anchor
got.
Tactical. I know they keep them in stock.
I'll have to look into that. Um, but when back to the Fort Leonard thing or Fort Riley I was talking about. Originally I chalked it up as Cougar, but now the more I think about it, like I said, I'd have that light there, that Surefire. And it, I mean, just as much as I do how bright that baby is, and I couldn't see nothing. I mean, I had no eye shine, nothing. So now I go, I wonder what that actually was. And every now and then I would hear just like a slight growl.
Mhm.
So I'm like, yeah, I'm getting my stuff. Because I always parked my truck real close to where I was fishing. If I wasn't fishing off the tailgate, I had my easy chair, my fold out chair sitting right next to the side of my truck. So all I could do is grab my stuff and throw in it. But that happened to me like 3 or 4 times. I would find, or I'd get that feeling like something is hunting my ass.
Yeah,
And
I always try to remind people if you're going to go someplace like that, especially if you're going to be alone, when you get to where you're going, turn around and back your vehicle in and park it. because if you've got to leave in a hurry, the last thing you want to try to do is turn a vehicle around.
Yep. Yeah. And the only thing I ever had on me was, my K bar, which I've
Mhm.
went on 4 deployments. I love my K bar. I still carry that thing in the woods with me. I mean, I do have that scallywactical transformer that I absolutely love.
Mhm.
I mainly wear that when I'm riding. My K bar is like that's my woods knife. I love that K bar, and usually I had
K-Bar
it.
makes some great knives.
Oh
I've got
yeah,
one that I carried. This one is it's a K-bar, but it's a bent,
ooh,
here,
yeah,
like this. I carried this behind my magazine pouch on my duty belt. You couldn't even tell I was carrying it.
wow, I like that.
And that was my little, if shit gets too hairy and I'm out of
Mm-hmm.
ammo. This is the knife I kept on my duty belt forever.
Oh man, yeah. I always
And
had.
it's a K-bar. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh yes, that's nice, man. That's nice. Mine's over on my dresser right now. Uh, but usually, I mean, like when I was deployed, I'd always carry 3 to 4 knives on me.
Mhm.
I usually had my K bar was strapped to my LBV. It was right here, and it was
Mhm.
upside down. So all I did is flip that switch and pull it out. I always wanted easy access to my knife because when you run out of pew pew bullets, the only thing you got is that slice and dice. So I mean, you kept everything easy access. The other thing I carried around me because this is a machine gunner's best friend is one of these bad boys right here.
Yeah, I've still got my black Gerber multi-tool
Mm-hmm.
from the army.
Yeah, this one I still got army ones too, but this one here has been tried and true. I've had this thing with me for a long time. I love this knife. That
Yeah, I
setup. I still use
always
it
try to
now.
keep a multi-tool with me. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're going to be in any situation, any shit hit the fan situation, a good blade is probably the best tool you can have.
It's if anything, it's a great backup because, like I said a few minutes ago, you run out of them pew pew rounds, you're going to need something. And so
Oh
I'm
yeah,
I'm I'm wondering, Kansas. I know there's been reports of Wendigo in Kansas, so I'm like, man, was that like a Bigfoot or was that a Wendigo? Considering I didn't have eye shine, I mean, with the growl, would probably lean more towards a Bigfoot, maybe, but
probably,
I
because they're
wouldn't
pretty
knock.
smart about keeping their head away from a tree
Yeah.
whenever, or behind a tree whenever you're shining a light. The reason we caught eye shine the other night out in Joe Bald was because instead of it being behind big trees, it was just behind bushes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's December, so there's no leaves on the bushes, so it didn't
Right.
have a whole lot of concealment.
Well, and that weekend, nope, it was dry that weekend. We didn't get rain that weekend. Never mind. So it's dry. Yeah, hearing something walk around would be an easy, really easy.
Mhm.
But yeah, that always wondered about that because I mean, Kansas is a cold place. You get cold and snow whenever they say, yeah, you need to go home because we're about to get hit. And then like an hour or two later, you got down there a foot of snow on the ground. You get snow.
There is there is one Wendigo report sighting I do remember getting from an Air Force guy. It was a gate guard at Minot, was it North Dakota?
Mm.
At Minot Air Force Base. Said during a blizzard he saw one walk within 20 feet of the guard shack at the front gate.
Oh gosh, them guards up there are lucky then.
Yeah, that is one cold base. In the wintertime, yeah,
Oh
Minot,
man.
Minot, North Dakota is nasty cold.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's just I find that stuff interesting because I mean I've been all over this world. I've seen a lot of weird stuff all over this world, in the skies and on the ground and in the water. I've seen some weird crap around this world, and it's amazing what you like. I've heard of Wendigo, growing up, but that wasn't real prominent in my culture. I guess you can say. My main thing I dealt with was paranormal, Bigfoot, and UFO. Because like
You're Cherokee, correct?
I'm Cherokee, Lakota, Comanche, German, Irish, English, Scottish, and Norwegian. Primary is Norwegian. I'm a mutt. 2 sides of my family are Norwegian. My Testament side hails from Ragnar Lothbrok to Ivar the Boneless. And so I always find that interesting. That's why I put those in my books. I put me and my family and my military style. I write. That's how I write. So a lot of things in my book is actually me or my family background. That's why I love writing it that way. Just for me, it's a personal.
Your
Uh,
best elements of fiction will have kernels of truth to it.
yeah,
Your best fiction, your best scary stories, or the stories where there's just enough reality for people to go, "This is plausible. This could happen."
yeah. I did some videos the other day with some of my Bigfoot encounters, some of my paranormal encounters, and my UFO encounters. And I'll admit, man, the paranormal side, that's hard for me because I've dealt with a lot of that in my life and a lot of very close family members,
I
especially.
don't generally deal well with the paranormal. It's not something I know a lot about. I try to avoid it if at all possible. Hey, Toombs is in the house. Hey,
Yeah,
Toombs.
there's my Aussie brother. Good day, mate. What's happening, Toombs? I'm glad you got to come in, buddy. Um, yeah, it's interesting. So these Wendigos, they're just like, gosh dang, dude. And so that makes me wonder. My youngest daughter, um, man, I think it was 3, maybe 4 years ago, and I chalked it up to her imagination. Now I feel like a butthead for it. But she kept telling me she was getting a feeling of something skinny and tall sitting in these trees watching the house behind my house here.
Well, I would definitely put some concern there. I would be worried about that. How far are you from Moon Valley?
Moon Valley, I believe, is well, because of all the twists and turns, like 30, 40 minutes. As a crow
That's not
flies, no, as a crow flies, I think it's like 15.
well, you're on the same river. Uh,
Yeah.
well, down in Moon Valley, just like 5 years ago, was a major incident of cannibalism.
Yes. Who was
The
that
Dallas
family?
County cannibals.
Yeah, I
They're
believe
in
I know the
prison now,
family.
but they don't know for sure how many people they ate.
Hmm.
They
Yeah,
said
it's
they know they'd been doing it for years, but they could only prove the one.
there you go. I mean, is that just straight up humans being cannibals? Is that window psychosis or is that a possession?
Your guess is as good as mine
Yeah.
because it's hard to get any good information on that case. The locals don't like to talk about it. Of
Hmm.
course, I wouldn't either. If I lived in an area that was known for, the only famous thing around there was an example of cannibalism. But the local, I met some of the locals down the valley, and they didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
But I could take you right to the house. But I don't know if it was one of the locals that did it, or maybe it was the sheriff's department. But after those guys were arrested, suddenly that house burnt to the ground.
I would venture to say, how do I put this in a nice way?
Little
Giving,
hillbilly justice.
yeah, yeah. Be honest with you, up until shortly after I left in '99, August of '99, to go to the Marine Corps. Yeah, I
Mhm.
served 13 years, 4 deployments, and 2 ex-wives later before I hung my boots up. I spent time in the Marines and I spent time in the Army. Whenever shortly after I left is when things changed here. But for a long time, just in the area that I live in now, you never saw brass here. If brass came in, brass did not leave. And if you came in this area and you did not, what's a polite way to put it, act in a according manner, chances are you probably didn't leave. And that's how it was here for a long time. And there's still a place not far from me that's still that way to this day. A lot of city folk had moved up here from Greene County and stuff like that. So, I mean, things have changed here. I came back, and whenever I came back, it was a different environment here. Everything changed.
That
But
Dallas County thing happened more recently than I thought. I was thinking it was like 4 or 5 years ago. It was in 2021,
oh, yeah.
so
Yep.
it's recent.
Um, there was a man, and I know that family, that had killed his wife and stuffed her in the freezer.
Heard about that
And
happening a few times.
I know that family. In fact, I knew that guy. I grew up with that family. And that's the thing. But, out here, people don't realize, and they think it's a joke. We are straight up hillbilly out here. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
straight up hillbilly out here.
my family's all hill folks.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things that we see that we don't talk to unless you're known in this area. They're not going to talk to you about it. Even me, even though I'm known, even if I tried to do an investigation on that Moon Valley deal to get information and I'm a local, if they know that I actually do a podcast or stuff like that, they probably won't talk to me because I don't want it out there.
Well, they clammed up talking to me, and my folks are from that area, Laclede
Mhm.
County, Dallas County.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the thing too. So, I mean, but the thing is, if you can get them people to open up, the stories they have will blow your mind. I mean, the cryptid, the paranormal, the supernatural stories, the things that happen out here all the time. You will be amazed at what you can find out if you can get them opened up. Now, it used to be the old timers. A lot of them are gone now, unfortunately. I used to get really good stories from them all the time. And I know there's weird stuff here. I was telling you that story the other day of that deal down here at Heritage Road and Hill Williams Unite. Who's that, Tunes?
Hillbillies, Hill Williams.
Oh, yeah.
Hillbillies are just the Australian version of bogans.
Okay.
Oh, hillbillies are American bogans, is what I meant.
Yeah, okay. I get you now, Tunes.
Toombs and I joke about that all the time about me just being a Missouri bogan.
Heck yeah. I tell you though, but there's a lot of stuff that happens out here. I mean, like I was telling you, about the Heritage Road incident. I'll never do that again. I was 16, 17 when that happened. I'm 44 now. I still live in this area and I still will not go back to that location and ever do that at that time of day, that night again, ever again in my life. That was probably one of the
I'd love to have you show me where that's at.
Dude, yeah,
it's
literally just a couple miles from my house. It is.
I'm not sure if I want to go there in the middle of the night, but I do want to see it.
I'll take you to it anytime.
Okay.
But I thought Doc was full of crap on that. I really thought Doc was full of crap. That was probably, and I don't scare easy. That scared the shit out of me. And I'm 44 now, and I still, sorry man, I'm getting chills now just talking about that shit. That scared the crap out of me when that happened. But I mean, stuff like that happens out here all the time. We have that kind of crap out here all the time. I've got a little girl that sings and dances down by my old place right over on the other side here, because I like to sleep with my windows open in the spring and the fall, let that cool air in. And I can hear this little girl singing and playing just right down here at my old place.
That's creepy.
Yeah,
do you remember as a kid? Do you remember as a kid learning to take your hands like this with a blade of grass and whistle real loud?
Yes.
Okay. I don't remember if I could do I haven't done it in years. I don't remember if I could do it or not. But we were down in Moon Valley one night, me and a couple of buddies of mine fishing, and we heard what that sounded like, that kind of screechy whistle from the other end of the valley, but it was so freaking loud. We were like, what the hell is that? And I grabbed a blade of grass and whistled back at it, but it was even me, it being right there. It wasn't as loud as what was coming from the other end of the valley. Oh, yeah. And I'm like, I don't know what the hell that is, and I don't want to stick around to find out because all I got's a 22.
Well, and the thing is Wendigos have been known to whistle. Bigfoot's been known to whistle.
A lot of Native American tribes say don't whistle at night because you'll attract one.
Exactly. That's kind of what I was getting at. So it makes you wonder what you ran into. What time of year was that when you did that?
It was summertime.
Oh, that could have been Bigfoot. And it could have been Momo.
Yeah, we were down there fishing. Now I have gone down there fishing in the dead of winter. I mean, as long as the Niangua is up, it doesn't generally freeze over because it flows fast enough. But when the water gets low, you'll get a lot of ice on it. And right now the rivers aren't very high. At least the James isn't. I was out there at the James River the other day, and it's down quite a bit. We haven't had as wet a year as we used to. Tim says we used to do that with gum leaves. You could just take a blade of grass and stretch it across your fingers and just make a almost like a Mayan death whistle screech. And I remember the first time I heard a sound similar. It was a screech owl, and I was trying to duplicate that screech with with a blade of grass, and could never quite hit the right pitch. But blade of grass, if you don't know what that is, if somebody blows on one of those in the next campsite over, I've sent some folks packing because they didn't know what the hell it was.
Oh yeah.
Just
You
being
know,
a little jerk when I was a kid.
I was I think I was on a show with William Nighthawk, and I was talking about your clicking with the tongue and how
Mhm.
man, that blows my freaking mind how you
You
can
should hear
do
it out in
that.
the woods. I can't. My sound filter on my
Yeah,
mic will pop it out. I mean, it. I don't know what's something about the pitch of it that it my sound filter. I mean, it won't come through.
yeah.
I mean, it just blocks it out. But I get out in the woods, and you can. When we were down at Joe Bald, I did it, and you could hear it echoing across the lake.
Oh, I bet, dude.
I can do it pretty damn loud.
I need to go down there. Just to let you guys a little heads up. I've got an idea for a new book that I'm gonna be doing. I'm writing on 9 books right now. I haven't written much in the past couple of weeks. I've had a lot of things going on.
It's the holidays.
Well, yeah, I've been too busy. But I brought this up to DA and an idea of a book I had. So I need to get down to Joe Bald and I need to get to LBL because I need to get that feeling of that area. But
LBL is a bit more of a drive. It's 6.5 hours from me,
yeah, so
whereas Joe Bald's about 45 minutes.
well for me then LBL will be roughly some 45 minutes from you.
Yeah.
So
So you're looking at better part of 7 hours to get to
yeah,
LBL.
yeah.
But I'm,
So
I'm I'm planning on going back. I mean, we're looking at Robbie and maybe Doc, uh, in sometime in 2024. We're going back to LBL.
I need to save up money. I need to go. But the book idea I had was instead because I write most of my books are military based because that's what I know. I know
Mhm.
military. I've done it 13 years of my life. I grew up playing soldiers in these woods out here because I knew since the moment that I could think for myself, at age 3, that I was going to be a warrior. That's in my blood. That's my all the blood that runs through my veins are some of the greatest warriors in this world. So I knew that was my calling, and that's how I write my books. But I want to do something, try my hand at something different. And right now, I'm thinking it's probably going to be called The Hunted. And what it is going to be a young kid that has a bad experience in Joe Bald, and which turns his life around, and he ends up going up to LBL to do some more research and gets his butt in a lot of trouble. And that's kind of where I'm thinking about going. But I need to get boots on ground for that, because I like doing that stuff. I like having that experience so I could put it in there. Like I shared that video the other day of the area that's actually behind my place that's mentioned in my Inhar Jar book one, Emergence. And that location on that little film I did is in that book. It's a special little moment in that book that changes things around for the excuse me for Ivar. So got a little off topic here, but so I mean, yeah, some of the topic, what topic? But
As bad as us.
yeah. So I mean, I very well could have had a Wendigo experience up there at Fort Riley, Kansas, and never known about it because I never put 2 and 2 together. Even with Bigfoot, you'd think because open as that is, I don't know if you ever seen the tank trails of
I have not been on Fort Riley.
There's like you might find a tree every now and then. You might. It's a pretty open spot, and the fact that I didn't um, see an eye shine, man, that could have been, I guess. I don't know. I just know whatever it was, I was on the menu. That was just I don't know how to explain it, man. I've been hunted by humans. I've been hunted by cougars. I've been hunted by brain farting. Um, well, not really hunted. I've had a bear follow me out here. Um, that feeling when you're being hunted, you can't shake that feeling, dude. It is. How do you describe it?
Well,
I don't know if there's a way you can really describe it, dude. It's
yeah,
like nothing else. I mean,
it's a different type of fear.
dude, you feel it. The best way I can say, you feel it in your bones, in your chest, your very soul. They talk about um, experiences from our ancestors, how they were hunted by dinosaurs and stuff like that. That feeling you get of being hunted and how it's what I'm trying to remember how they described
Genetic
it.
memory.
Yes, that is about the best way I can describe it. When you get into a situation like that, it's like, dude, I'm on the menu. Whatever this is here,
Mhm.
I'm on the menu.
It's a very primal fear.
Yes, that primal. That's what I'm trying to think. Primal fear. That was the word I'm trying. And that's probably the best way I can describe that situation that happened to me those 3 or 4 times. Being, I got to the point where I no longer went to the tank trails at night. I wouldn't do it.
You know,
Mm.
Ernest Hemingway said a quote, and this was about soldiers, about warriors. And I think you'll find it applies to anybody that's wore a uniform and gone toe to toe with other humans. Hemingway said, "There is no hunting like the hunting of man, and
Yeah.
those that have hunted armed men long enough and liked it never care for anything else."
Actually, yeah, I know that because I even said that on Williams' show the other day because it's true, man. I've hunted so many things out here. Hunting is a big part of my life. That is anywhere from 6 months to a year's worth of food. And I haven't been out hunting now because it's too warm. I hunt when it's cold because I let my meat hang in the tree about 3 or 4 days, get that age on her, get that bleed out on it real good.
Yeah.
Um, I I mean I'm very picky when I hunt, but it's a big part. Hunting and gathering is a huge part of my diet. And that's why I love this place out here like I do. And I can tell you now that quote 100% true. There is no other feeling than hunting another human that's armed. That adrenaline. I mean that that dude, you're 1 second from me being the victor or being the dead guy.
I've had that feeling, that same feeling many times when searching buildings for
Mhm.
armed individuals.
Oh
You
yeah.
just you just get that feeling. Every nerve ending is on fire. Every sense is heightened, and I've had that feeling out in the woods a few times when we
Mhm.
were out looking for eye shine, and well, like the other night when we were in Joe Bald, I kind of felt it then. I mean, I think not only were we kind of hunting something, but I think we were being hunted as well.
Is that why you laughed when I made that comment? It's like, uh, I got a bad feeling, guys. I mean, I was sitting there
Yeah.
feeling that too. It's like, dude, there's something there. I could feel it.
Well,
There was
well,
something
well,
there.
when I said the eye shine's gone, I think it left. And Robbie turned and looked at me and goes, "No, it's still over there." And then I looked over and I'm like, "You know what? You're right." And that was the time that the pew pew started coming out of the holsters.
Oh God, yeah. Oh God, yeah. Dude, it's just I cannot unless you've lived that experience. There's no you
I
can't
was filming
accurately
with one
describe
hand
it.
and a 1911 in my other.
Oh yeah. I mean, you cannot describe it unless you've lived it. You really can't. Dude, it's a different world. It'll change you. It'll change you a lot. Um, let's see if I had any other photos. A lot of these is what I created. A couple of these is what I created. This was another common photo that I found, um, which is funny because that looks more like Louisiana than anywhere else.
It does kind of,
Yeah, that background with
or a forest in the winter when there's not a lot of foliage.
yeah. I was looking at the moss hanging off the antlers.
Yeah.
That struck me as Louisiana. So I mean, I've not personally, I've not found any reports. Most of the reports I find is cold areas, except for that one I was talking about a little bit ago, down there off of the Missouri and Arkansas border. Which my
Well, that
family
area can
settled.
get pretty cold.
It can, my family is the co-settlers of McDonald County.
Hmm.
We're me and one, or my family and one other families. We changed it from Snake County to McDonald County. We settled Pineville, Missouri.
Hmm.
There's a when you go through Pineville, like you're going to Little Sugar, you cross over a creek. It's called Testerman's Branch. My great great grandpa was digging in a hillside and created that. And the Jesse James and James gang used that Testerman's Branch. They used Testerman's Cave that looks over Craig Lee. They used to use our farm. My family would stack square bales of hay up and leave it hollowed out in the center. and Jesse James and James guy would come in, and then they'd stack it up and hide them in our hay barn. So I mean, down in that area, my family is we know that area. That's our area. I mean,
Yeah.
My family's the first family that got married in that area. We weren't the first. We're the second family to move there, but we were the first family to be married there. And that's why, like my Cody Barrett Start of a Legend book that I'm writing, that's why I based that down there. It was because that's my family's background. But I mean, even down there, I've been down going to Pineville my whole life. I love Pineville. Pineville, besides here, is probably my second favorite place in Missouri to be, besides St. Joe too. But I was born in St. Joe, so I just got a kind of a birthing attachment to it, I guess you could say.
But the area along the Niangua down by Eldridge, Missouri, is always going to have a soft spot in my heart.
Oh yeah,
that's just a beautiful area and some thick woods out there.
Yes, and that's the way it is down there in Pineville. I mean, the winters. I remember winters in Pineville even then, and this is the 80s. Of course, in the 80s when I lived in St. Joe, we literally had to dig past down to the bus station. We actually went to school regardless if there's a dusting or not. We went to school and the snow was up to my shoulder. I'm walking through a path of snow down to the bus stop. That stuff happened, so down there in that area, which the way that story was described sounded like an area a lot like that. I can see that possibly because there used to be cold. I mean, this is a recent story, but I mean, yeah, it's possible. I just don't know of too many of them. But
well, it could happen even in more modern times. Look at the ice storm of 2007. There were people that were out of power for weeks.
Yeah, I heard about it. I was in Iraq when that happened.
The ice storm of 2007 shut towns down.
Mm-hmm. What's funny is when I was in Iraq when that happened, was the first time they got snow and ice in 50 years, 50 or 150 years. I can't remember now. I didn't pack no cold weather gear because, I'm going to Iraq. I've been here 3 other damn times. It don't ever get cold here. The cold here is like 70 degrees, it never hits that, So I didn't pack. So man, that 2 days that we had that issue up there in Iraq with that was a cold. I mean, during the day it warmed up and it was better, but them mornings when I was like out on ECP in the morning, it was cold. So I got stuck in the X-ray booth because I had no cold weather gear. I didn't pack it. I know they told us like, dude, I've been here 3 other times. It don't get cold. I am not packing anything extra. I ain't got to pack. Yeah, I'll admit that was a blonde moment on my part.
Hey man, it don't take much weight to add one set of polypros just in case you need them.
I know, man. I never thought about it. I mean, I've been to
just roll them tight.
Jungles, I've been in jungles in South America. I mean, I've been to Iraq, to Kuwait, to Ireland, Scotland, Australia, Guam, Singapore. Went through the Nile River one time up through Egypt. I mean, I've been all over the world. Usually, you can prepare for something like that, but you can't prepare for something that don't happen very often. And I got caught my pants down. It was a cold.
Happens to the best of us, man.
It does, man. So it was kind of an embarrassing moment for me, but oh well. So, I toughed it out. 34 hours after being on duty, it warmed up, and you're like, okay, you're good. You just kind of suck sitting in that little room on an X-ray machine, going, Kalash, Shakrin, Indar. That's pretty much what you said all day long. But and so have you ran across any stories of Wendigo like creatures from in other parts of the world besides the 2 we talked about?
There are quite a few Wendigo stories floating around, but they're not as well documented as, say, Bigfoot sightings because it's rare. I don't think it's because there's less of them out there. I think if it's you've reached a point where you actually see it, it's probably too late.
Yeah.
I think there are probably more interactions with Wendigos, but I would say they're probably 90% fatal. Wendigo has some very specific criteria that you've got to meet to be involved, to run into one. And I think if you're in a situation like that and you see a Wendigo, you're already in a bad enough situation. You may not pull out of it. But the people that were in the Donner Party didn't want to talk about it. Were they possessed by the spirit of Wendigo? Is that what made them think they wanted to think of eating each other to survive, or was it just pure human desperation? I mean, we'll never know, but it certainly ticks a lot of the boxes that a Wendigo encounter would have.
Man, yeah, I mean, that's interesting. Because I've often wondered that. It's one of my big deals. I'm about to nerd out for a minute, but I forgot to. Cold, your book. Cold. I'm about
Cold
to nerd
Hunger.
out. Yes. Is that kind of why you wrote that book in that way?
Yeah. Well, Kat Dahman, she's a fantastic writer. She came to me with the idea. She says, I want to do like kind of a post-apocalyptic story based on the Donner Party. She
Mm,
says, but she goes, nobody, she told me, she says, nobody does creature and violence like you do. She goes, your violent encounters in your books. She goes, it's like I'm there. She goes, I feel like I'm watching the fight unfold. She goes, so how about we do something like we work on the story together, but when it comes to the really dark parts, I have you write those sections. And I said, have you thought about adding a monster? And she said, what kind of monster? And that's when I told her about the Wendigo. And she's like, oh my God, that fits what happened. So we introduced the Wendigo to the story. And so for the most part of that book, if you read a chapter that's about the survivors, she wrote that. But if it involves the Wendigo, I wrote it. And it's went together pretty seamlessly. I mean, there are parts, there are times where I look back at it, I'm like, okay, did I write this part or did she? But the Wendigo stories, the Wendigo's appearance in that was something I brought to the table. But the way it behaves was based on like the Swift Runner event and things like that. I tried to give it as much real world influence as I could, and I think it came out pretty good. Yeah, looking back at it, there are things I would like to have done differently now. But every author that's ever released a book looks back at an old book and go, "Oh God, I'd have done this different if I could do it now."
Oh, I do too. I mean, I still listen to my books on audio, and I'm like, God, did I really write that way? Crap. Yeah. Because this is
I
still
uh,
learning.
I listened to the audiobooks that Cam Buckner did for Dixie Cryptid of mine.
Yeah.
And I will get excited listening to him. My wife's like, "You wrote the damn thing." I'm like, "Yeah, but when he does it, it sounds so freaking cool."
I know it really does. Like, I just finalized the Anhar Book One Emergence for audio, so that's going to be out within a week. That's my first sci-fi I wrote, and it really sucks for me though because I wrote that like over 21 years ago. I think I was in Iraq when I wrote it, and I never published it. Then they came out with that video game Halo. I was like, oh crap, dude, because I based the suit off the Marine Corps exoskeleton they were working on at the time,
Mhm.
which mysteriously I can no longer find that anymore. I don't know because back then I was on a government computer or they just cut the program, but they literally that was what the Halo suit is what their Marine Corps exoskeleton looked like.
It's probably
And
classified, so they shut it down.
oh, that's why I said maybe because I'm not on a government computer no more.
Could have
But
something to do
that's
with it.
what I based it off of, and then they came out that video game Halo, and I was like, shit, I just lost royalties. But it was fun to write, and I based that off the lizard people because there's three versions of your reptilians. You got the ones that's from Earth and they live underground. You got the ones from outer space, and then you got the interdimensional ones. So mine are the space-based ones, and that's what I wrote it off of. So it was fun to write. But then I just approved an audition for Saga Grimson Book 2, Black Death. So
Nice.
that is actually in the works now to come out on audio. So, but it's fun because that's what I do my research on. That's why I do my shows the way I do them. Anything I write about, I like to research, and I'll write my research into the books. So that's what I do these shows about, and that's why I chose Wendigo today is because it's prevalent in two of my books, and so I was like, man, let's do a show on it. So, and I was just it sucked because I used to have a lot of information on it, and I don't have it no more. I was like, that's why I asked you to join. It was like, yeah, you got knowledge, so I can use it.
Well, I can talk a big talk, but nobody really has firsthand knowledge.
No.
I've read a lot of encounter stories. I've done quite a bit of research. Another guy that knows a hell of a lot about Wendigos is Ryan Paul Tremblay. That dude, fantastic researcher. When it comes to Wendigo, he's him and the Wendigo and Skinwalkers are something he's really deep dived into,
Yeah.
and we're looking to get him back on the show sometime soon.
That'd be good. I know some people do put the Wendigo in the Skinwalker category. I don't. I think they're two different entities. Yes.
I do too.
Can the Wendigo shapeshift? Yes. Has there been
Generally, it's a one-way trip.
Yeah. So
it doesn't come back from it.
No. I mean, I've heard stories about them turning into bucks and being mistaken as bucks, but that I think there's only one or two stories I've ever seen that was of that. I mean, I could be wrong, but that's what I thought. So we're going to go ahead and get closed. We've been on here. Oh, yeah, good. This is a closing, and I appreciate it. And anybody who comes on this later on that wasn't on tonight, you got any questions, shoot me a message. I'll do my best to find the answers that I can for you. I'm going to be working this week to figure out what my next one's going to be about. This is a closing. I haven't had a chance to work on it much, but I'm still working on it that I kind of came up with. And this here kind of hits near and dear to my heart, especially me being a veteran. So as I close the show up, I'm going to read this. And I encourage you guys to like, share, and subscribe this video. Follow DA on YouTube on DNX Machina. Go to Amazon and look his books up. Follow him on Amazon. Look mine up. You can follow me up on Amazon too. I've got his information on a banner down here below. But this is kind of something I wrote. There comes a time when a warrior falls. They leave this realm and will be missed by all. Raise a glass and keep them in your heart. They have kept this realm safe and performed their part. Look to your veterans, your active duty, your EMTs, and the blue line. What they have done was walk that fine line. When the demon comes calling on your soul, they will be there to save us all. Hold them in your prayers, for they are deserving. They have served and are serving. So if you all happen to come across a veteran, law enforcement, medical field personnel, thank them. Thank them. I can tell you from my experience, and I've heard DA stories, it's a rough life that we've lived. There's a lot of us have seen things that we don't talk about, and there's a reason why we don't talk about it. We're not being disrespectful. Part of it's because it's hard for us to. The other part is you cannot understand why we do what we do. So keep them people in your prayers. Keep William Nighthawk in your prayers with his medical issues going on. Keep DA in your prayers as he's dealing with his condition right now. And I thank you guys so much for coming, and I hope to see you next time, y'all. Be blessed and love you guys much.
Good night, everyone.